got the community there. As I'm preparing to give evidence, they're going, brother, you've got to speak for us. You're our voice. You're our warrior. You've got to tell it what's happened. So I'm caught in this position between, okay, what do I do here? I thought, stuff it. And I swear in, so help me God, get in the witness box. Detective Chief Inspector, is there anything that you would like to say? And I just went, blah. And I don't think I took a breath for about 20 minutes. Geez, here we go. I'm going to be in trouble here. I gave evidence, and it's the only time I've ever experienced that. And again, it just sends a chill down my spine thinking about it. When I got out of the witness box, I got a standing ovation from the people in the courthouse. The chairman of the committee, after I've walked out of the court, pulled me aside, and I thought, okay, here comes the reckoning. I'm in for it now. He pulled me aside and said, Gary, we told you specifically to stay within the parameters. And I said, I'm sorry, I got caught up with the emotion of the thing. And he said, actually, you did exactly what we expected you to do, probably wanted you to do. So they wanted me to, blow it open too. So I feel proud about that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. I say Murph in the Morning. Morning has nothing to do with the show. It's just my wife came up with it, and we thought it sounded cool, so that's why it's called Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Thank you for coming back again. I know you enjoyed yesterday's episode with Gary Jubelin, who is a retired New South Wales, Australia police detective. Came off with a really fancy title that I would have to look at. It sounds like you're in charge, a detective chief inspector. Is that a high-ranking position?
Yeah, it's a commissioned officer's rank. It's probably we follow a lot from the UK, so a detective inspector, that type of thing. If you've seen the UK crime shows, it sits at that sort of level. So a detective chief inspector in Homicide, I was commanding or overseeing 3 sergeants and 6 constables on the Homicide team, and then depending on the size of the strike force, who else you're supervising. So it was, to my way of thinking, Steve, it was just at that level where if I took the next step, I'd be out of the game. It'd be more the administration, the management side of things. And as a detective chief inspector, yeah, exactly. It just, a gun to the head, yes. That's what I would have felt like if I went the next step. I could still be hands-on. I could still be involved in the action. And, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. I'm not going to say, unfortunately, I took those promotions and you do get out of the investigative side of things, but you're in a position where you can help others to promote their careers. And, I used to tell people, don't come to me because I have all the answers, because I don't. But what I do have is access to get you what you need to do your job.
And that's where someone that's got the operational experience, when you do get to that level, that's the way. You're not telling people how to do the job unless they're coming to you from advice if you've done something similar. Right. But you get the resources, you get the roadblock to any other barriers so they can get on and just concentrate on doing what they should be doing.
Exactly. So for listeners, yesterday we kind of went through Gary's background, how he got into law enforcement. It was a really complex description he gave us about how he had planned this for probably 3 or 4 minutes because he saw 2 police officers chasing a bad guy and he thought, it looks like something I want to do. And he did, which I really admire that about you, Gary, because you're not one of those people where you see him go by and you say, somebody should do something about that. You got in there and did something about it.
I'd ever think, just, okay, I'll join the police. That looks like fun.
There you go. And then for the next 34 years, you had a blast.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've talked about going through the academy and all that and some of the hardships he's gone through. But what we want to talk about now today is some of the cases you got involved with. And just to start off, what would you consider, out of your 34-year career, what would you consider the most memorable case? And that could be the case you're most proud of, or the one that was so exotic or strange that, it leaves a mark up here in your brain. Mm-hmm. What's the most memorable investigation you ever participated in?
Look, a lot of investigations, they take a piece out of you and add something to your life as well. It's the nature of the work that you do in Homicide. One investigation that probably changed me in the way I approach my policing, but also changed me as a person. And it was a horrific case from the early 90s. 3 Aboriginal children, Colin Walker, Clinton Speedy and Evelyn Greenup, living in a small community that was referred to Indigenous community on the outskirts of a small country town on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, about 6 hours north. And they all lived in the same street. Colin was 15, Evelyn was 4, Clinton was 16. And they disappeared over a 5-month period. So there was a serial killer operating in that street. I became involved in the investigation in 96, a re-investigation, because the initial investigations, there were failings in it, and there was a lot of talk that failings because they were Indigenous victims, that the proper response wasn't given to policing. I got given that case when I was a young homicide detective, and I went up there with the swagger into the community. They were living on an area on the outskirts of town that was referred to as a mission. And I went up there with all the swagger of a city homicide detective and came into this Aboriginal community. And I was shocked by what had happened, the lack of response from the police. And when I spoke to members of the community, they said, yeah, no one cares. And I said, why? And they said, because we're black. And I didn't believe them at the time. But now I sit here, 30 years down the track and say, that's exactly what occurred there. It was a shameful time in policing, I think, not just our state, in our country, the lack of resources that were given to the investigation. 2 of the bodies were dumped, and I say dumped because there's no nicer way of putting it, on the country road, Congarini Road, on the outskirts of town. Evelyn Greenup's body was found, and Clinton Speedy's body was found. They had puncture wounds to the head. They were found in a decayed situation. Colin Walker, who was the first child to disappear, her body was never found, and it was weighted down in the clothing that she was wearing at the time of the disappearance was weighted down with rocks and thrown into a river at the end of the dirt road where the other 2 bodies were found. A lot of legal people said, look, you can't say these crimes are linked. And when I became involved in the investigation, I got to know the community. And sadly today, this investigation, still no one's been convicted. We've gone to trial twice. I worked with the community over the next 20, 30 years, and they came very close with the community. I marched on Parliament House in Sydney in a protest with the community, and they managed to get legislation overturned, which was very significant legislation, because the person that was deemed responsible for it, or the person that was charged, was acquitted at the trial. And over here in New South Wales, or across Australia, we had what's called double jeopardy legislation. If you've been acquitted of a crime, you can't be retried. On the back of the protests from the community and parliamentary inquiries, legislation was changed. So we had another opportunity to charge the person. Sadly, it went to the High Court and the matter was lost. But what that taught me, Steve, and why it had such an impact on me, was I got to appreciate homicide in its rawest situation. These murders destroyed the community. The pain that the family still carry to this day, I'm still in contact with them regularly and see them regularly, is just something that it really brought home to me the importance of what you do at homicide. Mm-hmm. We missed investigative opportunities during that original investigation. Now, it can argue because it was socio-economic reasons or racism or whatever, but the point of the fact is that opportunities were missed, and these crimes could have been solved, and they should have been solved. And I've carried that with the families for the past 30 years, and it sort of changed my outlook on things, that not all police are not always right. We didn't do the right thing. We had the commissioner actually come up and apologise to the community. That was something that I initiated with the community. And that meant a lot to them, that the commissioner came up and said, and this is 15, 20 years after the children have been murdered, we're sorry, we could have done things differently. And that sort of, to me, set me the benchmark that you don't stuff up a homicide investigation, because the ramifications pass on to generation after generation. So that's probably had the most profound effect on me, and it sort of defined me, who I was and what I do in I think it also played a part in my demise. I don't think it helped that I was marching on Parliament House with a group of angry people. Actually, and this is quite funny, I laugh at it now. They've blocked off Macquarie Street, which is one of the main streets in Sydney, and we're marching down, and the chants of, what do we want? We want justice, that type of thing. So it was a pretty intense protest, and I went to 4 of them. And I got a call. I was an inspector at the time, and I got a call from the police media unit, and they've said, we've got reports of a police officer marching with the protesters. And I said, that's me. Do you want me to do an interview? It didn't endear me to my superiors, but morally, Stephen, I think you can attest to this. Sometimes you've got to do what's right, and it felt right for me to stand beside those victims. And I stand proud of the fact that that's what I did. And when I did get into trouble with the police, it was people from that community that openly and publicly supported me. So it's had a lasting impact on me and just changed my view on the world. In all honesty, that there is problems and we can do things a bit differently.
Yeah, and for our listeners, just so you understand, typically the law enforcement community is a very closed community, that you take care of each other. For lack of better terminology, you don't rat out a brother or a sister in law enforcement. But when you go against the grain, as what you're talking about, that takes real stones, real gonads to stand up and do what's right. And we took an oath to do what's right, to protect and defend, especially protect those who are defenseless. So the fact that you stepped up and did what you thought was right, and I think is right, you just stood up for 3 people that have been murdered and nothing's being done about it.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the response of that community and it's 3 different families. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The admiration that they must feel for you, because I'm sure nobody trusted you the first time you went there, and they probably didn't trust you for a long time. I'm sure it took quite a while to earn their trust.
Steve, when I first went there, I'd walk onto the mission and I would get abused and get yelled at. And I met one of the elders, Arnie Elone, who sadly passed away. When she first saw me, she just growled at me and she said, F this, F that, what are you doing here? You're a cop, you're a white man. Why would I listen to you? Look what you've done, blah, blah, blah. Really gave it to me. Before her passing, she became a very close friend. She would phone me up regularly and we'd stay in contact, and she helped me understand the way of dealing with the community and mentored me in the community. When I went to her funeral, she was a very popular lady, and it was a big funeral up at Bowraville, and I get chills just thinking about this. But this is the impact this job has had on me. That the coffin's been buried, and the family asked me to help bury the coffin. So standing there with her family throwing dirt on the coffin now, for a white cop to get an honour like that, it sort of blew me away. So that's the sort of connection you can have with victims. People would say I get too close to the victims. I hate that. As a detective, you keep everyone close, and showing some empathy and care for victims is not overstepping the mark. I didn't compromise the investigation. I did the right thing. But there is other incidents in that was a parliamentary inquiry, and there was a lot of pushback for me not giving evidence or whatever. And I wanted to do a written submission. I was told I couldn't by the people above me. And I said, well, if I don't do a written submission as a police officer, I'm going to do it as a private citizen, and I'm entitled to do that. But I think it would look better if the police support my submission. I did the submission and then got called, and it was a large parliamentary inquiry, and I was the first witness in the witness box. And the chairman, the politician who was the chairman of it, specifically warned me not to go outside the parameters of the... I was giving evidence under oath and not go outside the parameters of what the inquiry was about. And I said, yeah, okay. And it was very clear instructions. And it was just to stay focused and not unleash. Yep. And then I've got personal opinion. Yeah, and I've got the community there as I'm preparing to give evidence. They're going, brother, you've got to speak for us. You're our voice. You're our warrior. You've got to tell it what's happened. So I'm caught in this position between, okay, what do I do here? I thought, stuff it. And I swear in, so help me God, get in the witness box. Detective and Chief Inspector, is there anything you would like to say? And I just went, blah. I don't think I took a breath for about 20 minutes. I thought, oh, geez, here we go. I'm going to be in trouble here. I gave evidence, and it's the only time I've ever experienced that. And again, it just sends a chill down my spine thinking about it. When I got out of the witness box, I got a standing ovation from the people in the courthouse. The chairman of the committee, after I've walked out of court, pulled me aside, and I thought, okay, here comes the reckoning. I'm in for it now. He pulled me aside and said, Gary, we told you specifically to stay within the parameters. And I said, I'm sorry, I got caught up with the emotion of the thing. And he said, actually, you did exactly what we expected you to do, probably wanted you to do. So they wanted me to blow it open too. So I feel proud about that. Yeah, it played a big part in my career. And what it breaks down to, Steve, and this is the sadness of it, 3 kids living in the same street, murdered over a 5-month period. I say now, if we investigated the first disappearance when Colleen disappeared properly, maybe those other 2 kids could be alive, and that's the sad part about it. And the pain that the victims had is that they felt that no one cared, and so there's a lot of stuff happening with it. They've helped them give a voice, but I'm so proud of how they've fought for justice and continue to this day to fight for justice.
Well, thanks, good man upstairs, that you had the guts to stand up and do what was right. That's what we're supposed to do in law enforcement. We're not supposed to placate our bosses and do what they think is right. We do what we think is right within the law. And you certainly were not outside the law telling your position. Yeah. And the sad part of that is that the politician there didn't have the guts to come out and say, tell us what really happened. You know, he's like, they're using you as the scapegoat, so no blowback on him. And if somebody's going to get in trouble, it's going to be Gary, because I went through the motion and said, don't do it. But
we told him not to say that. Yeah. And you do see that a lot. I've felt that a lot in my policing career. They'll use you as a sledgehammer, and then if it comes out and it's all fine, they're all standing beside you. If it blows up, there's no one there.
Yeah. Brings back a memory. My first supervisor in DEA, when I got to Miami in 1987, calls me in, and there was several of us new guys in there. Most of us had prior police experience, not all of us. But he said, I'll tell you guys right now, if you're right, I'll be behind you 100%. When you're wrong, you're going to catch it. I'm telling you right now. And I'm thinking, I don't need your help when I'm right. It's when I screw up unintentionally. That's when I need your help, but you're going to hang me out to dry. Yeah. So the respect level for my new supervisor went downhill very quickly.
Yeah, it's not hard to stand beside someone when they're right.
Exactly. Anyway, I mean, that is a very memorable case. That's something that you're continuing to live with to these days. Just out of curiosity, did you ever have nightmares or dreams about those type of investigations?
Oh, not on that. You get overwhelmed with pain, and sometimes I see the families and different things where it'll feature on a documentary and different things. There's a really powerful documentary out that's on YouTube called The Barraville Murders that really encapsulates what the families have got through. But you carry that pain, but also, we talk about how you survive as long as we did in law enforcement. You also take energy from the families. Like, if I'm thinking, I'm just banging my head against a brick wall, the families would reach out to me and say, come on, we'd do this. And that sort of re-energises me, because people say, how did you stay on the case for 25 years? Well, I stayed on the case because the families were there supporting me all the way through too. But in terms of nightmares, I don't wake up in cold sweats thinking about all the bodies you've seen and different things. There was a couple of times when I was involved in the thick of it with some organised crime murders where the pressure, and you're just sick of speaking to bad guys. There were a couple of times that I'd wake up and I didn't want to get out of bed, and I'd sort of sit on the end of the bed, shake yourself off and get back into it. But that was just pressure jobs where you're making decisions that if you get it wrong, there's no safety net and someone might die. That type of thing where they're active investigations. You felt the pressure there. But no, generally I cope pretty well with what you see and do.
Yeah, I think people are blessed with certain gifts, is what I call them. And I think you and I had the gift of service to others. And, you're able to deal with situations and continue to function where most people would break down.
Yeah.
And we all learn to compartmentalize things.
That's right. And I just always knew I had a good bounce back. Like I've had enough of this, but I could take a deep breath and sort of throw myself back into it. So
yeah, immense respect for you, brother.
I appreciate it.
So Now let's ask you about what's the most dangerous event you ever participated in? Because I mean, you're doing everything from tactical to dignitary protection to homicide to certain narcotics. You've done everything. You got biker gangs out there. You got organized crime. What do you
Yeah,
consider the most dangerous situation you were ever in?
I'm just trying to think. As you said, there's always the incidents of different things, and involved in shooting situations, or when you're going after bikies and you're high profile, they know who you are. And I've been tapped on the shoulder a couple of times and said, you better keep your head down, or people get pulled over and they got my details. Early in my career, it's a carload of bikies gets pulled over and they've all got stuff about me, and it is not a good thing. I've had a couple of marriages. In my first marriage and the mother of my children, where we're living, a person, and it wasn't a big investigation, but he just became obsessed, would be passing round my address to local crooks and saying, this is where Jubelin lives. He turned up at my mother-in-law's place and made inquiries, and then also made it known that he knows where my son goes to preschool. And so when all that came to my attention, I was pretty livid, as you could imagine. I was working at a police station, and he's turned up at the police station. My boss at the time said, "You're not to go out. I'll handle this." And I sort of sat there for, I think, a millisecond or less. So, okay, I went out right at the front of the police station and I laid down the law, according to me. And it was basically, you come near my family, blah, 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 and things I was going to do to the person. He was being smug. Are you threatening me? And I think my words were, "No, I'm promising you. You stay away from my family, and I'm watching you," and every other threat I could think of. And to the point that I'm going to do him physical bodily harm. I am going to destroy him. I go back in and the boss goes, "I told you not to come out." I said, "Well, yeah, John, what would you do in that situation? Your family, your situation." And I said, "Do whatever you want to me. I can justify what I just did, and I will do it again, and I'll do it again and again." And that's the way I sort of stand up to that. And I think you've got to be that way. You want to fight fire? Well, I'll fight fire with fire, and I'll come even bigger. And that's the way I've approached it. A funny story in terms of being, well, it's not funny because a police officer ended up injured, but it's funny in our reactions. We got some information about a drug plantation. It was on Crown land, so it was on the state land. We needed to catch the people that were cultivating the plantation on the location. So it involved trekking through bush for about 3 or 4 kilometres, parking our police car away, and there was only 3 of us on the job. There was information this bloke had some attack dogs and really savage, Rottweiler, German Shepherd type mean dogs. So I'm running the operation, and it was basically only 3 of us. We didn't have comms because we're in a remote location. And so Paul and I are sitting off the plantation. I had another young detective keeping an eye on the suspect's location to see if he would come. Probably 300 or 400 metres away from where the plantation was. It's a covert operation, so we're sitting there quietly. It's exciting. I love this. This is like, I can't believe we're getting paid for it type stuff. Crawling through the bush, sitting there all quietly. And then you just hear this rustling in the bush, and these 2 dogs came out at me and Paul and just going for us. And it was still covert, so we couldn't pull our guns and shoot the dogs. But we've taken off, and we're sprinting. And I've never run so fast, and I'm a faster runner than Paul, but he was in front of me. We took off through the bush. These dogs just wanted a piece of us. And we get to a cliff. And we pick up Paul and I without saying anything because we're still trying to be quiet. We didn't want to scream, even though that's exactly what we wanted to do, scream, run for your lives. We're about to be eaten by these wild animals. We come to this cliff and we both come to the same conclusion. Well, we're not going to shoot them, but we're not going to jump off the cliff. We need to defend ourselves. And we pick up the biggest sticks we can find and we run at the dogs with the sticks. The dogs just sort of looked at us and thought, these 2 are a bit out there. The dogs have taken off. We're trying to catch our breath and we're sitting there and we're just going, that was scary. And we're trying to catch our breath. Then I hear all these screams from a couple of 100 metres away. And then I hear my name called out, "Gary, Gary, quick." And then I hear 3 gunshots and
Oh.
dogs, and I'm thinking, oh my God. I thought the person crawling out was obviously the young police officer I left there. So Paul and I start running back in the direction of where the gunshots and the screams are coming from, and then this young cop's come running round, and he's got a light shirt on. His just whole chest is covered in blood, and he sees us and just collapses. And I'm thinking that this is not good. And it wasn't good, but I thought he had a chest wound because it was just covered in blood. But what had happened, the dogs had attacked him and got him to the ground. He's wrestling with his gun and trying to keep the dog off, and he shot half his hand off, trying to defend himself. Yeah. But a mistake that any one of us could make in the circumstances, no judgment there.
Right.
But we didn't have communications, and half his hand's blown off. We'd take his shirt off and bandage him up, and then we've got to try and get him to help, and we're 2 or 3 kilometres away from our vehicle. And we found a house, and we knock on the door, and this is the type of stuff, Steve, you can't make up because no one would believe you. It's probably 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. We knock on the door of this house, and it's a desolate, isolated area in bushland, so it's obviously people that want to keep to themselves. This lady opens the door, and she's drunk, and she invites us in for a drink. We're standing, this bloke covered in blood, carrying him. Would you like to come in for a drink? And we go, no, but have you got a phone? Yes, please, can we get in there? And we phone, and she's sitting there, and the ambulance wouldn't come in until the area had been cleared because the bloke had guns too, and the police officer said he had a firearm. So we had to get the area cleared. So we're there with this lady waiting for the ambulance to come in, resources for about 45 minutes, and the shot officers going in and out of consciousness, and we're trying to attend to that. And she would just sit there the whole time. You sure you don't want a drink? And anyway, I don't know why we're laughing at a situation like that, but yeah, they're just the sort of surreal moments that you have. And I still remember that day, and it was the last thing I thought would be a lady standing there saying, hello, would you like to come in for a drink, when we're carrying a bloke that's been shot in the middle of nowhere.
Well, there's a song out about day drinking, right?
Yeah, actually, I probably should have had a drink. It might have helped on the day.
One when it was all over.
Experiences like that, and I've had other ones where I got some information from a person known to the offender that was worried about this offender, an armed robber, and this person, when she provided me this information, she knew me or knew my family, and that's why she came to me and said, look, he needs to be arrested. He's robbing banks and all that, but you won't hurt him, will you? And I said, no, we'll do it the best way we can, and appreciate you passing the information on. We went, executed a search warrant. I was in charge. I'm talking to him. He's behind the door, and he's refused. A tactical police officer's made a decision to climb the back balcony, go in the premises, and the offender's come at him with a knife, and he's been shot. And I'm talking to him. He's yelling at me, screaming. And then I hear a gunshot, and that's when he was shot and killed. And we kicked the door down, or tried to shoulder charge the door down and bounced off it, then kicked the door down and come in there. And there's this person that I'd told someone that we wouldn't harm him, and he's laying there. We tried to bring him back to life. So that one rocked me, actually, because I thought I didn't join the cops to see people killed like that, and did what I think a lot of cops do, and probably we shouldn't do. The people come in and the psychologists come in, how are you feeling? You're right with this. Back in those days, Steve, they'd sit you around in a circle, so all the cops that you're on the operation with, and go, has anyone got a problem with this? And I'm thinking, I've got a problem, but I'm not going to put my hand up and say I've got a problem. Yeah,
right.
I've just seen someone killed someone I promised not to harm. So they've improved things now, but yeah, that carried heavily on me for a couple of nights. I just thought maybe I don't want to do policing when you see that. You don't want to see people hurt like that or killed in that instant. But yeah, you get over it and you get conditioned to it, and you move on.
You do. Yeah, you do. And that's why I say I think we're blessed with that ability to compartmentalize. And it's the same way here. I got in a shooting where my partner was shot and the informant was killed in Miami. And they keep saying, Murph, you got to go for counseling. Yeah, I'm good. Never went for counseling. And my partner survived. He's still alive to today. He came back on the job after 8 surgeries, finished out his career. but that was in 89 and I retired in 13. I had from 89 to 13, I had dreams about his shooting. They weren't nightmares.
Yeah.
It was just reliving the situation over and over because I didn't go get any counseling. I thought I was a tough guy. Just a stupid decision.
Steve, I've had cops on this podcast and cops that I know, and some that I've got the utmost respect for it, and the stress has got to them at the end, and they've left their career. And when they unravel it all, and one person in particular said that the advice he was given was that if he got this dealt with when these incidents occurred, he'd still be in the cops. And you see that time and again, that people just need to deal with it at the time, but we just bottle it up until it sort of breaks you. But, yeah.
Later and throughout my career, as when I got in the supervisory ranks, if any of my people got in the shooting, I drove them to the counselor's office. I had one guy who had been involved in multiple shootings. He was cool as a cucumber, and he would get mad at me. He would do it. I told him because I was the boss, and he was respectful, but you could tell he was ticked off at me for making him do it. And it's like, I don't care. This is what I want you to do. This is because I care about you, and I don't want you to have any, issues down the road. And once I retired from DEA, I never had any more dreams. But the funny part about that whole thing is Kevin, he lives here in Florida also. We still stay in touch. He and I never talked about it until he was on this podcast about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were working together. When he came back, we were still partners. Every day we're there. He was single. My wife has always been the kind that if we're partners, you're family.
Yeah.
And he was always at the house. We might have drank a little bit more than we should back then, but if we'd had barbecues and things, and he was always included, but never even talked to. I mean, you'd think it's like, dude, you okay? Everything's good, but we never talked about the shooting.
But we're stupid, and we are stupid. Yeah. But I know what you're talking about. It'd be me saying to you, Steve, you okay? And you go, yeah, good. I go, that's good. And then you'd be talking about the football. Talk about the football or something like that. But yeah, if people address it, I think it's a good way. But yeah,
I do too.
Mate. Well, what they do now in New South Wales Police, and I think it's good for commands like Homicide. We have to see a psychologist once a year or once every 6 months. Yeah. And they brought that in because I was like you and like your mate that you were talking about there. I don't need to see a psychologist, but when you're rostered on, you're not selling out. It's not you're putting your hand up saying, hey, I need to see someone. You're rostered to, and you sit down and have a chat, and that's probably a good way of handling it. They do things a lot better these days than what they used to.
Yeah. Well, back then, as feds, everybody was out to get us. And if we talked to the DEA psychologist who had a private practice, but he was under contract to DEA, then he's going to go tell the bosses. And then our careers are shot. They're never going to trust us again. And, we're really stupid about it. So let me ask you this now. That bombing thing might be hard to beat, but what's the strangest case that you ever investigated? And it might be one you've already told us about.
Yeah, one where it got strange is the magnitude of how it built up. And I was at the stage in Homicide, and I talked. I think yesterday we were talking about you got to be passionate for Homicide, and I'd been in Homicide for a long time, but then this job came along and it ignited all my passion again because it was a real challenge. It was the murder of Terry Falconer. He was a drug manufacturer who was serving a lengthy custodial sentence, and he was a prisoner on day release, so he got to work at a smash repairs place with an ankle bracelet. And 3 people turned up purporting to be police officers, 2 dressed as detectives, 1 in uniform. They cautioned him, handcuffed him, and took him away in the police car. That was the last time Terry was seen alive, and I think it was 10 days later, his dismembered body turned up in the Hastings River, which is about 4 or 5 hours north of Sydney, on the coastal town at Port Macquarie, cut up into 6 bags. And I asked for that job, actually. It was I had a court matter that finished earlier than what I thought. I had my team. I went to my team and said, look, this looks like an interesting job. Do you want to get involved in that? Little did I know it would change my life for the next years. We worked that case. Yeah. Terry was also an informant. He was an informant for 7 different law enforcement agencies. So the list of suspects was like the who's who of the Sydney underworld. Bikies, organised crime, the whole range of things. Anyway, and when I talk about these cases, it's always a team effort. Like if I'm saying I, it means I and the rest of the team. We worked on that case for about 10 years. It stopped. It was the informant that had the bomb. When he came into the investigation, that gave it direction. But the further we looked into the case, the more crimes that we uncovered. And murders up on the Gold Coast, a Victorian gangster murdered. So it was across the country. And I think we had something like 8 or 9 open murder investigations we were looking at the time.
Wow.
With the Terry Falcon, the usual fights with the bosses were telling me to shut it down. I'm going, look, I'm telling you, these guys are going to kill again. This is organised crime. You don't abduct someone and cut them up. And that's not your first crime. They're dressed up as police officers. We've got to put the resources in. I went to Gang Squad and I basically dragged the case with me, and that gave me a bit more freedom, so I worked on it. It had its highs and lows over 10 years. In the end, a couple of interesting ones. We found one of the people on the investigation we uncovered was a contract killer, Sean Waygood. He's dead now. I can mention his name. He died in jail. Sean Waygood, we had phones off, was talking about, I've got this great job, I'm going to meet you somewhere. They were talking in riddles on the phones when they got the phones off. And I don't know if you've got it in the US, but there was this child's cartoon called Teletubbies. And they were calling each other characters from the Teletubbies to protect their identity. We had an analyst that sort of cracked the code, and we anticipated where they were going to meet. It was a service station on a highway somewhere at 2 o'clock in the morning. We sat covertly taking photos of them, these two groups meeting, showing photos. What we didn't realise at the time, it was a photo of the person they were going to kill, and that was a person from Victoria. He flew up to Sydney. It was a drug deal that's gone wrong. An Asian crime syndicate had sold some drugs or bought some drugs, and there was a dispute over the quality. And Paul walked out of the hotel room after he landed in the airport, said to his girlfriend, if I'm not home in half an hour, I'm probably dead. He wasn't home in half an hour. He was killed by the people that were associated with the contract killers. Big web of organised crime. We brought it to a crunch 10 years after Terry's disappearance. There was people on the run. We knew they were going to meet, and we brought our SWAT team in to arrest him in a high risk operation. From that, some of them rolled. Sean Waygood, the contract killer, he rolled under the pressure, and we ended up locking up 14 people, and I think there was 130 charges all up. And
wow,
I'm really proud of that job, but the brutality of the people that we're going after, just to give you a sense, and I know it's a true crime podcast, so people probably are prepared for it, but we went to the location where they cut his body up. It was a shed, and one of the people that rolled took us there that was involved in this. They hung him up on a metal hook, suspended him, ripped his teeth out, and then cut him up whilst hanging on the hook and dispose of his body that way. The brutality of people that are prepared to do that. And that's what I would argue with the bosses when I was working that case with the team. We'd argue, if they're capable of doing this, we've got to stop these people. We've got to stop these people or other people will be killed. And that's what we set out to do. And I'm proud of the results that we got, but it was one that really sort of pushed me to the limit. And then on the back of that, I had a bit of an experience, not unlike yours, on the scale of yours, but a TV series was made about that particular investigation. It was one of the most popular shows in Australia at the time, Underbelly. And the writers approached senior police, and it was a second or third series, said we want to do a story about police operation, the cops taking on organised crime, that type of thing, and they steered it towards our investigation. So the senior police gave the writers permission to follow us around while we're still investigating the case. And I said, look, yeah, I know. Because the previous series was about police corruption, and I think they wanted to show, well, look, there are still good police around and we're doing good work and we can take on these bad guys. But yeah, I'm walking around running this investigation, got writers there with permission, and I said, look, I don't think this is appropriate. It's not a good look when we've got writers, coming into the squad and that type of thing. But they end up doing an 8-part TV series on it, and I think that changed my trajectory in cops, in that it put a target on me. Like I enjoyed it. I had no problems with the way it was portrayed and that. sort of as a working cop and you're being portrayed in a TV show that people are watching, it was a little bit confronting. But I was proud of what we did with the job. So
when you're talking about being confronting, you're talking about internally with the police department.
I think, Steve, what it did, because I was still working in the cops, some people that I respect, would say, oh, that's great, representation of what's happened. Other people that I would say weren't the real people that weren't working, they were slightly pissed off, why aren't you making a TV series about me? And I'm thinking, well, probably because you don't do anything, you sit behind a desk, that type of thing. So there was a little bit of that. And then when you go to court, I think I got an extra serve by the defence barristers sometimes because they want to make that's that dude from Underbelly. Let's carve him up in the witness box. So I think there was a little bit like that. But I could also use it to my favour in that if I turn up at a crook's house or a witness's house, they go, oh, that's that bloke from Underbelly. So it had the benefits and the negatives. But it was an interesting experience, as you well know. And having your private life played out can be quite confronting because when the writers came to me, they said, what's your private life like? And I said, well, I was married and I've got kids, and they've gone, good, tick. And I'm separated from my wife, and they've gone, okay. And I had a relationship with a work colleague for a long time, and now I'm in a relationship with a lady I met at a murder trial for a serial killer. And they've gone, great, we don't even have to change anything. And they ran with it.
We can exploit this guy upside down.
We don't even have to make this up. So when the first episode came out, friends and family said, you want us to come round and watch? I said, no, I'll watch it on my own. And I sat there, I think I was in the fetal position, sucking my thumb at some stage, watching your private life play out. And what was awkward about it too, Steve, I'd forgotten this part. This is funny. So at the inspectors' meetings, we have once a week in Homicide. There'd be 6 inspectors and the superintendent, the commander, and we'd be discussing the murders and the investigations that are running. When the Underbelly story came out, the lady that I've had her on here as a guest, we're still good friends. The lady that I was in a relationship with for a very long time, we'd moved on, and she'd remarried, and I'd moved on. But we were still working together in Homicide. She was one of the inspectors and I was one of the inspectors. And we've come into work after the Underbelly played out the next day with some love scenes and different things. And we're sitting there trying to be talking professional. That's the word I was looking for. And one of the other inspectors said, stuff this. We're not talking about Homicide right now. What about you two? You were disgraceful on TV last night. So, yeah. Again, moments you... Yeah,
I was going to say that I think the difference is, you guys were still on the job, whereas Narcos was after we retired, and there's so much Hollywood in there. So.
Yeah, well, I've heard you talk about what's factual, what's that, and I think at one time you broke it down in percentage, 30% actual. 30%, other 30% is these events happened, but they've added bits or taken bits away, and then the other bit is the Hollywood thing.
Yeah.
What I found with the Underbelly stuff is they captured the essence of what it was about, and there was some stuff that they couldn't put in because if they said no one would believe what's gone on. They did do the bomb scene. They put the bomb scene in the Underbelly. So yeah.
Well, there's one more thing I want to ask you about, and so for our listeners, I cleared this with Gary beforehand. He's been very open and transparent about how his career ended and why. So just want to ask you about the investigation of William Tyrell and what the results of that were.
Yeah. Okay, well, I thought I'd get away without you asking that one, Steve. I was trying to entertain you and keep you distracted, but...
You did a great job.
Being a good detective that you are, you bring me back on track.
When agencies don't support their people, it just really pisses me off.
Well, okay, what happened? William Tyrrell, it's a tragic situation. A 3-year-old child dressed in a Spider-Man suit was at his grandparents' place when he disappeared in the morning. And I'm talking a cul-de-sac, like a dead-end street in a small country town, and he just disappeared. there's an iconic photo, if you look up William Tyrrell, that was taken just before his disappearance, of he's sitting in a Spider-Man suit on the back deck playing with his foster mother and foster grandmother. So it captured the attention of the whole country. And I wasn't involved in the initial investigation. I took over the leadership of the investigation 5 months into the disappearance, and I worked the investigation for 4 years, led the investigation as the detective inspector. And there was a lot of things happening with it. We had suspects. It was high profile. If you sneezed, it was on the front page of the paper. Everyone was desperate to get William Tyrrell stories, so there was a lot of stuff going on. So it was a high profile case. I had been running it. I've said this publicly. I've said it in court. There was a suggestion that the case should be closed and sent to unsolved homicide. I argued against that and kept running the investigation. I was happy the direction the investigation was going in. And then I was at work one day and the boss came up to me and said, "You wanted upstairs," which is never good. It's like going to the headmaster's office. Internal affairs are here. And okay, what's this about? Go up there. They got search warrants for my telephones and they put these allegations to me. The most substantive allegation was I falsified an affidavit. So I'm cautioned. It's like when, not under arrest, but you're cautioned and you've been formally spoken to. My phones were seized, search warrants, falsifying affidavits because we had listening devices in place for one of the persons of interest we were looking at. I knew that. I wasn't worried in the slightest. I thought, who's done this? Like, what is this, a witch hunt? Like, falsify affidavit, just check the affidavit. I didn't sign the affidavit, but I'll stand by the person that signed the affidavit and all the information in there is correct. So that's a false allegation. And then they've said, and you've illegally recorded conversations on your telephone. And on my telephone, when there was a suspect in this matter, I won't mention his name, the matter's still unsolved, but there was a person that I wanted to speak to. I was working with a forensic psychologist, Dr. Sarah Yule, and it was agreed that the rapport as the officer in charge, if I go and speak to this person on my own, it's probably going to get the best type of rapport. He was an elderly gentleman, and just go in on my own and have a hard conversation with him because there's a lot of things that made us concerned, red flags I'll call them, about his possible involvement in William's abduction. We also had Supreme Court warrants to have listening devices in his house. So it's not like I'm going in to record a conversation that hasn't already been approved. There's listening devices in his place. We've had them in his place for weeks. But sometimes those devices would break down. I was going to have a hard conversation with him. I was worried that he would make allegations against me because you don't normally speak to a suspect on your own. I record a conversation on my phone. If he makes an allegation, if the devices don't work, here's the conversation that we had. I did all that. Didn't make any secret of it. Didn't even know how to record. I know you're probably like me. I'm assuming here, Steve, but technology is not my strong point.
I didn't know I could record on this.
Well, I only learnt when I was going in there and doing it. A sergeant had told me how to record on the phone. She showed me how to do it. So I go in there. I'm going, this is Gary Jubelin. I'm going to such and such a place. Like, I'm not making a secret of it. It wasn't something I hid. Anyway. Right. Long story short, I get the search warrants. I get not suspended. I'm just not allowed to work on any cases. And the bosses at the time, so I get my gun taken off me, my police car taken off me, and not allowed back into the homicide office. And they said, well, you might as well go off sick. And I said, I haven't had a sick day for 30 years. I'm not going off sick. I'm going to turn up, dressed in my suit. You work out what to do with me. They put me in a hallway. It was a good plan of theirs, but I countered the plan. They put me in a hallway with just a glass window looking into the hallway where everyone walks into the boss's area on level 9. And they kept me there for 3 months. I wasn't allowed to access any investigation, so I'm just basically sitting there. And I was told by people loyal to me, they're trying to break me, and I'll come out and do something stupid, make a threat or whatever. So I sat there playing whale music and meditation music loudly as the bosses were walking past trying to break me, and I just sat there smiling, like just not let them break me. That went on for, I know. When I say they didn't break me, let me tell you, it was pretty tough. I bet. So I thought it was a good way of getting back at them. Then my son was serving over in Afghanistan, and he had 2 weeks off. So I said I'll catch up with him, and we went over to Portugal for a trip, and I met up with him there. And I've come over and I'm whinging to him about how tough I'm doing it here. He's gone, Dad, I've come from a war zone. And I go, okay, well, fair enough. That trumps what I'm whinging about. What's happened to me. We had a good time. We caught up, landed at the airport, early flight at Sydney Airport. A couple of weeks later, I get off the plane within half an hour. So they're obviously watching. I've come back into the country. I get a call from Professional Standards, Internal Affairs, going, look, we're going to charge you. And I've said, well, I met with the Deputy Commissioner and the Assistant Commissioner, and they told me specifically we're not going to be charged. They said, no, it's all changed. What happened, Steve, when I was over in Portugal, and this is an abbreviated version, but what happened when I was over in Portugal, remember the Barraville investigation I was talking about, the parliamentary inquiry and that? When I was over in Portugal, the Barraville community phoned me and said, the politicians are coming up to Barraville and they want you to come, but the police won't let you because you're corrupt. And I've gone, I'll make some calls. I spoke to the politicians. The politicians overrode the police and said, yes, you are coming. That was on the Monday. I landed in Sydney Airport on the Wednesday, and they're trying to get me charged before I went up to address the parliamentary inquiry. And so the timing of it, they might say coincidence. But anyway, I told that I was going to be charged. I got in contact with a barrister. She got back to me and said, the police want you to hand yourself in because they've circulated you as wanted. I'm thinking that's funny because they drop me home each morning. Yeah, like they know where I am. And I did what you do when you're wanted. I went to the pub and had a drink. And I rang them the next day and said, well, why don't you just come and get me? You know where I am. I'm here at home. And they served the papers on me and it went through court. Long and the short of it, Steve, my heinous crime was I recorded a conversation on a telephone that I still, to this right to do, lost my career over it. I was fined $10,000. I'm not going to apologise for it. I'm sure if I took a knee and said, look, I'm sorry, and they would have then had me controlled, I could have stayed in the police. I wasn't sacked from the police. I chose to retire from an organisation that I think I'd outgrown or didn't want me. Am I bitter about it? The people that did it to me, yeah, I haven't got a lot of respect for them, but I love every day I had in the cops. I loved the career I had, the people I worked with. What happened to me was unfortunate, but there's so many good cops that reached out to me after this happened. People I didn't know, people from interstate, people I've never worked with, had very similar stories. The policing career ended. So it didn't end the way I wanted it to. But perhaps it ended the way it was always going to with someone like me. There was going to be a crash at the end. But since then, my form of revenge is not be bitter about it, is to get on and enjoy life and look back with fond memories of the times that I've had. And since I've left the cops, it's opened up doors, like doing this podcast. I worked for years with 60 Minutes. I was contracted with 60 Minutes, a TV show, and doing some stuff there. I've had a fascinating time since I've left the cops. I miss it, but
Yeah. Just a quick question was that illegal for you to record that phone call? Because you're consenting to the call.
Yeah, it was on my phone.
The conversation, sorry.
Yeah. So on the phone, under the Listening Devices Act, my interpretation of it, and a lot of legal people support this, is that you can record a conversation without the other party knowing if you're doing to protect if you have reasonable cause to protect your lawful interest. Now, that was the legislation I was relying upon, that I'm speaking to the suspect. I'm not telling him I'm recording this, but I'm doing it to protect my lawful interests if he made allegations against me. The irony of it was when we went to court and the trial, and it was humiliating. Like get off the train, and I'm walking to court, and I've got cameras there. The court was full. It wasn't a good time, but I thought I'm not going to bow my head. I walked in proud, walked through the front door, didn't sneak in, and but when the person I was recording the conversation with gave evidence, he said, and not verbatim, but along the lines of, and we've already listened to the conversation I recorded. The courts had listened to it. And then he said, Jubelin was going to come back and put me in jail the next day, and he did this and he did that. All the things I said I was worried about him doing, he said in the witness box. I thought at court we'd all get up and go, "Get out of here, you idiots." But no, I was convicted. But Steve, it's changed my view on things. I have an appreciation of what having the power of the state coming after you, but I'm not ashamed of what I did. It wasn't for personal gain. I didn't cross the line. I was investigating the abduction of a 3-year-old child, and sadly, that's been what's been lost with this. William, to this day, we still do not know what's happened, and I saying I'm here, I'm available to give evidence. I want to give evidence. I want to be involved in this, but we still haven't found an answer for it, and that's the thing that hurts me more so than losing my career, is that the families, what they're going through, and watching the police fight. But it's a different way of ending a career. I didn't get a placard. I got a charge sheet.
I'm sorry, man. It's not funny, but.
Well, but Steve, this is that humour that we've got to have. You've got to laugh.
Yeah.
Like, normally when you pass out in New South Wales Police, if you've had a long and decorated career, you get piped out of the police station and it's all formal, and you get this big, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's got all your insignias and all your ranks and your badge and all that. And when people talk about that, I go, well, I got a charge sheet and I'm going to get it framed in a really nice...
Jealousy is such an ugly monster, and you hit the nail on the head. It distracted from the death of an innocent child because somebody thought priorities. It's just outrageous, and I was shocked to read about it, because here in the United States, if one person consents to a conversation, you and I could record you and you not know about it, but I'm consenting and it's legal.
Steve, I think in other states it's legal, and I think I'm the only person that's been convicted of this offence. One thing, it probably didn't help with the courts, because by the time the trial came around, I was working in the media, so I was writing for one of the biggest newspapers in the city. And so I had access to, I could put it on the front page. And after I went to court before the decision had been put down, because there was threats of what's going to happen to me, and I can write the article, but I'm never sure of the headline. But there's a picture of me on the front page of the weekend paper, standing on the beach with my arms crossed, going, "I'd rather go to jail than pay a fine." And my barrister phoned up and said, "Gary, you are a difficult person to represent." And I said, "But I mean it." And people think you're kidding, but there was a principle involved here. Like, if they're saying, right, I'm so bad, you're going to have to humiliate me and convict me, send me to jail. And it was almost like, and I meant that, and I know I'm not going to be too popular in jail, but I meant that as a challenge, like, I haven't done anything wrong. Don't play games and fine me. And it was a $10,000 fine. It was a significant fine, because I also lost my career and my potential earnings. Send me to jail. But anyway, I ended up with the fine. But that was probably not the best headline that you could have done before the judge is about to sentence you.
Well, I tell you, your career after law enforcement has been extremely extensive. I've got a whole list. I've got like a half a page of things that you're involved with. You're an investigative journalist with News Corp, writing for the Sunday Telegraph. You've co-authored 2 #1 true crime bestsellers, I Catch Killers, which you've got there on the counter with you, and Badness. And I found where you've authored 6 other books about various investigations.
Yeah,
Is
just
that right?
not authored, but just where I've been quoted or contributed to other investigations where they've talked about investigations that were run or involved in. So.
You're the host of one of the most popular podcasts in Australia, and it sounds to me like you're branching around the world now, which is fantastic. It's one of the top-rated podcasts over there. You've hosted 2 podcast series, one predatory about pedophiles and one called Breaking Badness, in which you went inside a maximum security prison. That right there tells me you need counseling. Contributor to TV program 60 Minutes and Under Investigation. You're portrayed in the TV series and movies Underbelly Badness and A Model Daughter. Consulted in numerous TV series, including Underbelly, Janet King, Crownies, and more. You've even toured Australia with your I Catch Killers live events stage show. That's really cool, man.
I know. It's you sit here and I'm laughing because you know and I know. How the hell did it get to this? How? And I think it's just enjoying yourself and taking the challenges. The live show was terrifying. I was absolutely terrified when I'd done a lot of public speaking and all that, but you'd know better than I do. when people are paying to come and see your show, pressure, and there was a mate of mine who was an actor. They offered me up to do the show, and I said no, and they said, well, what if we get Rob Carlton involved? He can do the show with you. COVID hit, and so it got put off a couple of times. We had all the places booked around the country, and then there was a window of opportunity and said, right, the show's on. And then Rob said to me, I thought it'd be sitting down Q&A. He's gone, no, idiot, this is a theatre. We're going to take the audience on a journey. So I had about 40 minutes of monologue to learn, like timing. And I'm going, Rob, I don't know if I can do this. He's gone, you're playing yourself stupid. It can't be that hard. So I'm taking people to the crime scene and that. But I was so nervous. Before we went out on stage the first time, Rob's doing his sound warm-up, doing A or whatever he does, and I stuck my head over and said, what are you doing? And he's gone, I'm just warming up before we go on stage. I said, what can I do? He said, well, get yourself ready. So I just shadow box. I had that much adrenaline. I just thought, I'll shadow box. But had a lot of fun. And, yeah, I look at life. You get these challenges, you get these things that presented to you, and it's how you respond. And the life I'm living now, I could have never envisaged when I was in the cops. And I'm proud of the fact that how my career ended didn't break me, and I've sort of seen, okay, there's more to the world than the policing career. But yeah, I think sometimes people say, would you go back if you had a choice? I don't think I could now, in all honesty, go back because I wouldn't trust an organisation. I wouldn't be so giving. But I would love to be running an investigation. I still, to this day, when I look and see something come on the news, I think, I wouldn't mind being involved in that. So I miss that aspects of it and some of the close working relationships I had.
Yeah, you talk to your friends who are still on the job and they start talking. Like guys will call me just to catch up, and they're still working cases, and they'll start, what are you working on? What do you got going? And they'll start telling you about it. I'm like, okay, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you called this person? And I'm hitting them with all these questions because now your investigative brain is kicked into gear. And they're like, hey, old man, we got this. We got it.
Yeah.
But you're right.
And you've got to check yourself, haven't you? I know what you're saying. No, we can do this without you. You're sure? I'm here if you do. I know what you're saying.
I was just so surprised when I retired from DEA that the agency continued to function without me. How could that be?
Well, you can imagine my surprise. They're still investigating homicides. But people that go before us warn us of that, don't they? Like your mentors, the people that go before you, always say, Gary, Steve, you're just a number. You'll move on, and someone else will take it on. And when you look back at it, I look at it that you're just passing on the lineage. You're just a keeper for that period of time, and you pass it on. And that's the way I look at homicide. That people are coming in bigger, better, younger, smarter, doing the job. Had the period of time, and I was fortunate enough to have that period of time, and loved every moment of it.
Right. I mean, life's been good. I have no complaints. It would have been better if my partner hadn't gotten shot, but he recuperated. But other than that, I had a blast.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the end here. Everybody, I'm going to put this up so you can see it. But if you want to find more out about Gary, his podcast is I Catch Killers Podcast. You can find him on YouTube at True Crime Australia. On Instagram, it's at I Catch Killers. On Facebook, I Catch Killers with Gary Jubelin. And his last name is Jubelin. TikTok, I Catch Killers Podcast. LinkedIn, Gary Jubelin. And check out the website, icatchkillers.com.au. That'll get you on to more information. His books are, again, I Catch Killers and Badness. Where can people find those books?
I think you can get them online, like order them online. I probably should be better prepared for that, shouldn't I, Steve? When I've got the product placement here, where can you get them? I'm not sure. Online, if you look up either Badness or iCatch, you'll see online, and you can order them, have them delivered.
There you go. I mean, show this guy some love out there, supporting what the things he went through at the end of the career. Unfortunately, we've had so many people here on the show that have experienced the same things, and you just think surely the Aussies are not going to do that. They're better than that. But like I say, jealousy is an ugly monster, and people will react in very different ways. I think your publisher is at HarperCollins Publishers.
HarperCollins, yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the big boys. So, Gary, man, it's been a hoot having you on here. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on your show. I just sincerely hope I don't drag your ratings down. You never know.
Likewise, if this is the end of both our careers as podcasters, Steve, we've got each other to blame.
Well, we'll meet up in some neutral country and enjoy a cold drink and, commiserate
Yeah.
with each other and do something. But your honesty and your transparency is greatly appreciated on here. I'm the first to say on this show, nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. You are
Yeah.
not a bad cop. That's not what this is all about. It's nothing more than simple, stupid jealousy, which resulted in running a career of a dedicated law enforcement professional and a killer getting away after kidnapping and murdering a 3-year-old child. It's unconscionable. It's
Yeah.
unforgivable, the things that go
Yeah.
on. But you coming
Yeah.
on and telling the story, and I certainly, after I said it, that I talked to you beforehand, and you said, well, I thought we were going to get away. I thought, oh, crap, maybe I shouldn't have said it.
I just wanted to make you feel bad, Steve. But
But I'm over it now.
oh, okay. Well, what you just said, and coming someone from you, and you probably hear it from all the guests, but your career is something that I look up to and admire, and I got to say, I might even be a little bit jealous of. You talk about that horrible jealousy, like some of the cases you've worked, but it's always good talking to a former cop or someone that's lived the life. So it's been great, and let's try and stay in touch. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, brother. And for all the listeners out there, check out Gary, check out his books, make up your own determinations. Don't take what I say as the absolute truth. I expect you to do your own research and you decide what's true and what's not true. But I thank you so much for continuing to come back every week. If you haven't signed up and subscribed on YouTube, please go over to YouTube, type in Game of Crimes Podcast at the top, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, download some of the episodes, and send me your comments. I even like the ugly comments, so send them on in here. I enjoy reading them. I know they say you're not supposed to read the comments. Murph can't help himself. I'm going to read them, and you just say whatever you want, man. Free world, right? But I appreciate you coming back every week, but I know why you do it, because you love coming and playing the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, and that's the Game of Crimes. God bless everybody. Stay safe. Gary, thank you again so much, brother.
Thank you.